Hello, Andrew. Welcome to the show.
Hello. So exciting.
It's been a little bit. We've been gone for a few days now because Andrew wanted to support his family like an asshole. Uh, but it's nice to be back. This is the last day of my vacation from work, so we were both having a little bit of some time off.
Now we have a very exciting part of the show to watch. I'm very excited for the scene that's coming up.
Yes, it is. It is one of my favorite scenes as well. I initially, uh, I initially wasn't a huge fan of it. And then I got to like it a lot more. I don't know why. I think it was just the sudden tone shift initially took me a bit out of it.
The sort of like stylistic, um,
I wouldn't
the
say
way it
yeah.
visually is displayed, or
I think it's just such like a shift that when I initially saw it, I was sort of met on it, but it's grown on me a lot. It's my I think my second favorite scene now.
okay.
Also, I got
Your
a
first favorite scene in the ninth episode.
yeah. I quite ninth is my favorite episode, and then seven is my second favorite, and then three is my third favorite.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, remind me, seven is okay. Seven's right before this. So is that
No,
when?
this is seven. We're
It's right
watching
after.
seven right
This
now.
is seven.
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
We didn't finish seven. Right, so it says eight, part one. We're going to finish seven and then start on eight.
That makes sense.
Right? Because it's literally just this scene, I think. It's like, I don't think there's anything after this. It's the fight, and then it's over. But, oh, before, let me get rid of some stuff. Before we start, I have a little announcement.
Oh.
It's a precursor to a much bigger announcement, but it is an announcement. The card game, the art for all the cards is complete except for one that the artist is still making. So the last art piece is being commissioned and being worked on as we speak. Maybe
awesome.
not literally, but
it's the process anyway. Cool, man. That's so close.
Okay, and then the next two steps are icons for the cards. Like there's a template for it, but there's like icons that change out. So depending on like faction and set icon and whether it's like a unit, equipment, or incantation card. So there's like there's 10 icons that I'm in talks with an artist right now to do. Once that's done, well, actually not once that's done. I'm going through and doing the rule set as well, and so that will have to be designed. But the rule book, the 10 icons, and the last card art is really all that's left. Oh, and a playmat, but that might be done separately. I'm not really sure if I can fit that in the box. So we're very close. So I'm seeing this month, and then we might be able to start listing it for sale in like September-ish, which is also when I get my copy of the book, the novella, back from the editor I've hired.
Okay,
so
sweet.
So big development.
How long is the ETA for the editing?
I'd have to double check. It's sometime September.
Okay.
And I got kind of
awesome.
It was a little expensive. Actually, I shouldn't. It was like pretty good price for who I got, but I got like an actual editor who works with some of the publishing companies, which was kind of cool.
That's pretty cool. That's like, you say which, or is that, I don't know if there's like an NDA involved?
No, I could double. think it was. Let me double check. It was 2, and I don't want to mess up the name and look like mess up the names and look like an idiot. I think it was. Oh no. Yeah, it was Penguin, and then there were some British ones, like
Okay, sweet. Yeah, Penguin's like
right.
it's quite well known.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of shit. What's the one I was trying to remember? And Orion, which are like UK based ones, I think. I'm pretty sure I've
I
seen.
think they can like put.
Oh, you've cut out. Whoa. Andrew is died.
What?
Oh, he's back.
I mean, I have died. What happened?
Oh, you
What
just
happened?
cut out, and then I said he cut out, and there was just silence. I'm like, oh no.
I was just asking if you think that they could put a good word in for your book with like the Penguin people.
I mean, I don't know if he still works there. I think he did some jobs there, and now he works. He might work independently.
Gotcha.
But I could ask him about next steps if I want to do. I'm still not sure if I want to traditionally publish. The the upside to publishing, self-publishing, is you get more control over the piece itself. So like for example, I get to pick what the cover for the book would be instead
Right.
of. I mean, it's a bit of a meme, but a lot of people. It's not just me, but there's like I think a growing sentiment that modern book covers are kind of dog shit. And all it's kind of like why is this happening? And the basic answer is the book covers used to be you used to hire a commission an artist to do some book cover, and so it would be like they would read the book and then they would put how they felt about the book onto this cover page. Whereas, at least this is my understanding. I don't really work in these industries, so this is based off what I've read and heard. Whereas now, the designers are sort of armed with a marketing background, which isn't like a dumb decision, right? If you have a book, the most important piece of your advertising is the cover. That's the thing people see and decides when they want to buy.
Totally. It's like a Steam page. It's like a Steam capsule art. Like it's very there's a lot you have to get. I'm guessing it's a pretty similar concept to Steam capsule art. Like in Steam capsule art, you want to like be very clear about like okay, well this is the genre. So like if you're doing like a fantasy book, you'll want to have like probably at least one of the guys should have like a sword or something like that. Right? Like
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I assume it's probably the same for basically every big form of any real artistic medium, right? Like even movies. Movies are a bit weird because here's a fun fact. If you look at a lot of movie covers, the placement of the people on it, like the faces, does not line up oftentimes with the actors' names. Like they'll put the actors' names in a different order than they appear, and that due to contract stipulations. Like certain contracts require certain amounts of billing, or in billing in the sense that where the names go, which I always thought was a little. I get it, but it's like silly. But my point is it leads to a sort of a character difference in sort of the in the sort of the nature of the cover, right? The sort of I for the purposes of the discussion, I would say the artistic cover versus the marketing cover, though neither are really quite accurate to what they actually are both attempting to do advertisements, but I think there's a slight difference in the approach and how it's expressed. where I think like the marketing cover focuses primarily on sort of maximizing the marketability, whereas the artistic cover, while attempting to be marketable, sort of expresses something about the artist's engagement with the work.
Yeah, but I do think that, you know, if you spent all this effort writing a book, you'll want to do something that will like get as many eyes on it as possible, right?
Right. I don't want to come off like it's not valid to use the sort of marketing approach.
It's just kind of like an unfortunate reality, perhaps, might be.
Yeah, and it's probably a bit of a taste thing as well, right? Like all the books I grew up on were like 70s and 80s fantasy fiction, which has I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I can find it real quick. But I remember there's a particular artist who did a lot of I think he did all. I can't remember if he did all the Piers Anthony books, but he did A Spell for Chameleon, and he has this very this style that I sort of associate with that era of fantasy. Yeah, I'm trying to find. Yeah, Michael Whalen. I looked into seeing if I could hire him to do a book cover. Wow. I looked into how much would it cost? And turns out the answer is if you're not a big publishing company, you don't have enough. There's no point contacting him. Literally, I went and I'm like, could I hire him? And I looked on his website and this website frequently asked, can you hire? No. That's what the publishers are for. And I'm like, damn it. Oh,
just be like, good morning, sir. I am a small publishing studio, or just I'm a publishing studio. I represent X Geng Publishing.
Well, if I remember correctly, I think it sort of implies that he deals exclusively with big publishing companies, which to me says, I understand. He deals with the people with the big checks. I get it.
Yep.
And like, listen, if you're like a famous artist and they'll pay you like a shit ton of money, like I get it. I'm not going to demand like you do a piece for me when I can't pull out the right, like get paid what you're worth. And obviously he's an insanely successful and well respected artist. So that's that kind of pull. But yeah, so I don't really know what the next steps are. Maybe I'll do like he offered a follow-up thing where I could do like an hour Zoom call.
Oh yeah, that would be.
And so I can maybe talk to them a bit about it, but one step at a time, right? I imagine as soon as I get the editorial assessment back, it's gonna be like, what the hell were you think this is? Oh, this all broke. What the fuck were you doing? Now you need to hire 5 more different editors to fix all the bullshit.
No, because you're actually like this is a legit like edit job. Like the guy's spending a lot of time with it. Like when
I'm spending a lot of money to get it. If it comes back,
no, I bet. But then you want it to come back with like the hard criticism, right? Be like, but that sucks because like you spent so much time on this thing already, man. Like, I don't know. I hope he looks at it and he's like, well, it's good, but you also want your money's worth and be like, nitpick the hell out of this and like make this thing like even more awesome or something.
Listen, this is one of the best times to criticize the book. I'd rather get criticized now than after it's released.
That's true.
Like this is
You're still like you can't avoid that. It's always gonna happen.
Right. I mean, nothing's perfect. But it's a good step because basically the point of the editorial assessment is to have someone who does it for a living figure out all the issues with it, and then because one of the big issues when I started was do I hire? Because one of you don't hire an editor, you hire a developmental editor or a structural editor or a or like one of the other 13 different kinds of fucking editors.
Oh goodness.
Right, and you have to do copy editing, which is different from proofreading, which is different from whatever the next fucking one was. So part of the editorial assessment is like, okay, how many editors do I have to hire? How fucked is this? Do I need to hire this editor or this editor? Which editors are best? Right? Because you don't want to hire all of them, because hiring one is like a fair bit. Hiring each one's like a fair bit of money. They got to read through the entire novella. They have to read through every fucking line and have something to say about all of it and all this different stuff. So it's it's a lot of work.
You're gonna end up with like a whole list of guys on the like author, and then like edited by like boom 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 boom, all these like.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm not sure. I don't think books typically list all the editors. I might, because I'm a nice guy like that. Like all my cards have all the artists listed, because the whole point of hiring like the individual artists was to showcase their talent, and so it'd be kind of silly to not. But this is actually kind of an interesting story. I know you've read it, but rhetorically, have you ever read a book called A Wrinkle in Time?
I think I might have.
I guarantee you have, because I was in your class when we read it at school.
So, but they is that the one, like they made a movie about that recently? But
yeah,
that's
it was
not,
dog
surely
shit.
that's not. Yeah, it's totally different, isn't it? Like I remember listening to like review.
The it follows the same basic beats, but there's like some interpretation along like some of the aesthetic lines and whatnot. A Wrinkle in Time is kind of basically they took A Wrinkle in Time, and it was by a bunch of like woke filmmakers, or that might be a bit too far. I just really hate who's the actor who plays Miss Captain Marvel.
Brie Larson.
Yeah, that movie is the reason I hate her as much as I do. So like, I didn't read it. I read it in school, but I read it before that, and it was like a book I read with my dad. It's one of the books I remember reading with him. We read that one, and we read the Narnia series. Not all of it. I think we got through the first 3 or 4. I think we started Caspian, but didn't finish it. But so, like, obviously, I have like a lot of personal memories and sentimental value into that book. So I love that book. And then Brie Larson comes out and says, "You don't get an opinion on it because you're white." I'm like, Jesus Christ. Why do you have to make yourself so hateable? But one of the interesting things about that book, I was reading a thread on it, because one of the artists I follow, because this is basically all I do on Twitter. I look at art accounts, and because I might want to commission them for stuff later. Also, I like art, but he was the place I checked, and they called the publishing company, and they didn't know. And I'm just sitting there like, holy shit, no one knows who made this cover. And so he did like an entire internet sleuthing job where he contacted, and there was like a huge chunk of his followers who was like, anyone has any information, and they reached out to some other authors, and basically they came up like I think they found like a person who it was like likely to be, but they couldn't find any definitive evidence of who it was, which is just insane to me. You have like a well-known cover of an incredibly well-known book, and just no one knows who made it, because no one was crediting the artists, which is kind of insane to me.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah,
always give credits.
And like I mean, it's a book. You have an entire copyright section that takes up like half the page, and you usually have like half a page and like a blank page, and like there's it's literally it's a book. You can just add pages to it. There isn't like a runtime where you have to be concerned about people seeing this. You can add as many pages as you want. There is no limit.
You know what else? You can make up your own pages. You don't even need to follow a format.
Right?
You just be like, this is a page now. The cover art and editor's page.
And like literally, if the book gets too big, like thickness wise, you can just make it bigger as well. There's like an
You
almost
can just do that.
there's an almost infinite amount of things you can do. But apparently one of them. But okay. But as fun as it is to talk about books, that is not why we're here. We're talking about an IP that has a video game and a show now. I actually don't know if League has any books. I don't think it has a book. It probably has like an internal book.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it has published novels. Let's find out.
It's almost like we have all the information we could ever want.
Yes, there are novels about League of Legends.
But do they give credit to their cover artists? we must know. But
not even an author.
it's not even.
Okay, I'm kidding.
That'd be a little funny. It's just like a POV perspective of Jinx, and the author just says Jinx. They just get it ghostwritten. Listen, if you can get a ghostwriter for a celebrity, I don't see why you can't get for a fictional character, you know? But probably we should stop with the dilly-dallying, unless there's any announcements you wanted to make before we begin.
No, let's get into it.
All right. Last we left off, Marcus. I think the last we left off, Marcus is alive and just Flame dying.
Marcus has been uninstalled from the show.
Marcus.exe could not be found.
Yeah.
Time to start. Before it was better, but that's gone. So you should start now with whatever it is you want to do. And Jinx seems a little cranky. In regards to her sister and Caitlyn. And so now we're gonna have a little confrontation on the bridge. Are you ready? Are you ready, kids?
Aye, Captain.
Yeah, Captain. Well, I should check to make sure it was not playing.
Jinx has spurs, apparently. Or maybe those are just various clanging metal things that she has.
Yeah, well, you know how it is. I have no idea what she'd be writing.
Is that the bomb that she picked up and...
It's the hex crystal.
Okay.
I want to fix... You're a bit too quiet on my sound settings.
Whoops.
Well, it's not you. It's me. I quieted you a little bit. And yeah. Oh no, this is what I want. Whoopsie doopsie. So yeah. This scene is a little intense. As the kids would say, she's giving off negative vibes. Concur. I do like the score is really nice in the scene. We have the high strings at the high frequency.
Music, yeah.
Yeah, and then the facial expressions again are just
yeah. So I recently learned how facial expressions are actually done. Because I've been looking into this and learning how to rig characters, because I'm kind of interested in getting into animation.
That for a second you were pulling some like autistic joke. It's like, no, I read up and I'm supposed to be doing these. I didn't realize. I was listening to Maddox and he told me that actually this is how normal people.
Yep.
Yeah, when I'm happy, I can do this thing I learned about called a smile.
I probably do need a crash course in that sort of thing, to be honest. But
I just thought people were baring their teeth at me and trying to eat me this whole time. Turns out it's an entire social construct. It's very
yeah, some people find it like a nice gesture or something. I
yeah,
don't know. It's
fucking
doesn't make any sense
weirdos.
to me, but yeah.
But no,
But
you
anyways,
need
so
you need facial animation for like your games.
yeah, I mean, I just mean like an animation. So, man, okay, these guys are insane. These guys are legitimately like insane with what they're doing. Like, not just like, oh, this is like really, really good animation. No, like what these guys are like accomplishing is like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure this is like absolutely not standard. I might be like overhyping it. Like, I don't know how movies do it and stuff. But basically, what you do when you animate is you actually have to like,
Oh no, Andrew, you cut out at create.
right?
You're like, what you actually have to do is create.
Oh wow. So yeah, you have to create like variations of the model for all the different like vowels and the consonants that they might make. And then on top of that, you also need to have like a layer of like what the facial expression is. You blend them together. And then again, like you have a limited number of those. So I think that they're actually like like no, I don't know what the word for it would be, but they're doing every single one of these animations like individually, or they must have like an insanely large amount of shape keys. And I know that they do have shape keys, so it's not like everything is like entirely different, but like the variation that they have that they're able to do, like I don't even know like how they could possibly be setting this up. It is very interesting. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I know a bit about how they did their animation, and that's mainly because I've listened to some animators talk about it. But my understanding is that they got on a bunch. They they let a lot of the animators take lead on a bunch of the stuff, and came up with a bunch of what are supposed to be like cost efficient techniques, but are a bit unorthodox. So my understanding of how this one in particular works is they have like their 3D models, which will do sort of the underlayer of the scene, and then on top of that, they do. I guess the term would be hand drawn. Like it's on like a. I don't. I can't really understand. I mean, if I really researched it, I might be able to get like more specific on that. But like, I think a lot of the stuff, it's like a general 3D model, and then it's animated by hand on top of that 3D model. Is how I understand that they did it. And so the benefits, at least as it was explained to me by someone who was an animator, is that there are certain things that are really useful in 3D for. And this also isn't that different from like how Disney used to animate its 2D stuff. Like Tarzan, for example. Tarzan, we think of it as 2D, but all like the big scenes are 3D and then drawn over, and not quite rotoscoping. So like Lion King, the scene where the gazelle are running down the cliff, that was all done in 3D, and then the animators drew the 2D stuff on top of it. What I think
You
is,
mean
is
the the Lion King isn't live action?
no, I mean the first Lion King, the 2D Lion King.
I thought they filmed those cartoons in the wild. Crazy.
Okay, but I get that everyone's gonna think you're talking about the new one.
I'm
Right?
just doing a
I
layered
I
a layered
know, I
critique.
know, I get the joke. Everyone's going to think the scenes are 3D animated, uh, and then they would take it and then they would draw on top of that animation. So this was sort of what Disney was experimenting with those. And I think Arcane takes it to a bit of a sort of a to a bit of a higher level. That's not quite the term I'm looking for. I think it integrates it a bit more. That's probably what I'm looking for. So it has that 3D look to it, but it also has that 2D look. And the idea was you can maximize the benefits of both systems and negate the deficits by becoming codependent. And that's really what we want to get everyone to do on our show. We want everyone to be codependent. Nothing bad has ever happened from being codependent. But yeah, so it's a combination of like 3D and traditional 2D. Not traditional 2D, because it's like digital 2D.
Gotcha.
Right, and this is kind of a decent example of what I'm trying to say, because we have like the swaying as they stand up, which is easier probably to do in 3D. Because if you're doing it in 2D, you would have to do like frames for like all the slight different motions. Whereas you can do it, whereas 3D might be a bit easier for that.
It's definitely.
I'm sorry, and you keep cutting out.
Process. I'm talking about like the glow behind Vi that kind of like. If you look at it, like there's a little bit of a fog and there's this glow that kind of like radiance over her, if that makes sense. Like, I think that's like processing type stuff, but I honestly don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of guessing.
This is kind of interesting as sort of I'm not sure this will be interesting to anyone else. It does not really have to do with Arcane, but the sort of language and medium of film is kind of interesting, right? We have sort of the first mediums of film developed by W.D. Griffith when he created the KKK. This is only slightly hyperbolic, but like, so this scene we have, it's just a little funny to me nowadays because we have like to sort of illustrate the sort of madness of Jinx. We have these lines going through the screen that we all see, and what it is it's replicating actual film, and the actual errors and inconsistencies and like it breaking apart or whatever, which was used to great effect in Fight Club, which we won't talk about any further because we're not supposed to talk about it. But obviously the artistic idea here is the psyche is breaking down, much like the film itself is breaking down, which is kind of funny because we don't anymore for anything. Right? Like this would make sense on like in like a film theater or on like a Betamax or a VHS. But obviously we're not using film, so this would never happen on one of our products. But it's just kind of interesting to me that we have this visual cue that's carried over into a medium where it doesn't really make sense anymore. But because as an audience we're so used to it and us sort of understand the reference, it is still used as this sort of artistic shorthand.
What do you mean though by the film breaking up? Do you mean just like imperfections in the actual like?
Yeah, like physical, like you would be seeing this on actual film because there would be like physical remnants or errors, or I don't know what the technical terms is. I don't work with film.
Sure.
Right, which is interesting because if people started making films now, like for whatever reason, we have sort of a weird confluence of events where no one ever conceives of making a story on a visual medium until like the modern day. The equivalent of it would be like artifact errors, where like the pixels would get all wonky and shit. But because it's basically the same concept, but films have kept this old this, even though that would make more sense given the medium nature. Which isn't to say no one ever does it. I think you see it a bit in like horror films, or I shouldn't say horror films because I tend not to watch horror films, but like sort of like I think a lot of the what's it, the guy who did like Pony Island Inscription in his games have some stuff like that. Or actually, the end of Inscription is kind of a good example of what I mean, where the game starts breaking down. But it's not really relevant to Arcane specifically, but I just thought it was interesting to comment on how I'm not really sure what the technical term we would use is for traditional visual media, like film and shows or whatnot, sort of retain this. But, to sort of my point earlier, video games, which were more recently developed, don't use that sort of language. They use a language more in line with this sort of computer/digital space to convey the same ideas. Which I just thought was kind of interesting from like a historical artistic analysis perspective. I don't know if anyone else would find it interesting, but
well, it makes me think of like just the overall idea of like people deliberately adding like what would be seen as errors.
mm-hmm. How do you mean?
Like a film is breaking down or whatever, like when there's issues with that, and then it's like, oh, we don't have this issue anymore, but I'm conveying it because it's it's a fourth wall kind of meta meaning. It's like dramatic. It's like a layer above dramatic irony. The character's sad, so it's raining, but also the entire flippin' like thing that the world is built on is malfunctioning.
Oh, you don't mean dramatic irony. You mean pathetic fallacy.
That yes, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, actually, this is kind of an interesting artistic. So, I don't know how interesting this is going to be to anyone, but one of the things that's talked about is so there's actually a bunch of different ways in which you can make a film. And you tend not to really see a lot of differences because basically all the popular movies are usually all the same kind of movies. By which I mean not that they're identical, but they're made using similar philosophies. This is why, for example, Top Gun Maverick felt so different compared to a lot of the movies that were being released with it at the same time. Yeah, because Maverick was being a sequel to the original Top Gun, was made using the same sort of artistic philosophy as the original Top Gun movie. Which I don't even know what the terms for them all would be, because I'm not a film expert. I think Top Gun is what's called a realism. And then there's whereas a lot of the new ones are like post-irony. I don't know what the actual term is, so I'm sort of using other terms to define them. Just a second. But so one of the things I'm trying to remember who the artist is, but they're who the director is. But depending on your artistic philosophy, because some people would argue the movie is meant to be entirely immersive. That is, you begin it, and then it entirely exists as its own self-contained story that you are sort of a part. Like you're literally seeing a fourth-person perspective, or a fourth-wall perspective. Whereas other people want to sort of don't prefer that method and want to sort of engage with the specific quote I'm thinking of is the artistic fingerprints. And so some artists will make their stuff in a way that has like the movie but also engages with you on a, I'm not sure it's quite a meta level, but will attempt to engage with you, the individual watching, in certain ways, or will try to express individual or strange artistic measurement, right? And now we're sort of getting into, if I talk a bit further, I'm going to use incorrect terms to explain what I'm talking about. Right? This sort of relates somewhat to auteur theory, where like individual directors have specific styles, which are also these sorts of fingerprints. And so, depending on the director, you will have more or less of this sort of this out. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's sort of outreach to the viewer. So there's sort of this showing where the viewer is sort of within the work itself, but not really. How do I put this? There are films that you watch and you consume, and you can think about it and engage with it, but the film itself you're not really a part of. Whereas some artists and some filmmakers, and so let's go artists in general, want to bring you to some degree into the work. And so I think breaking down things, including certain errors in it, or including certain imperfections, sort of functions to create a particular kind of perspective on the film.
This makes me think
work.
of you mentioned that you'd often talked about the one guy who like has like no dialogue in his movies. Like
Yes.
There's a movie called The Hidden Life by Terrence Malick, and I don't know if you maybe the story itself would interest you. Maybe it won't. It's about like a guy in like Nazi occupied Austria, and he's like a Catholic guy, and he's actually a blessed, but it's all about like him like not wanting, like him like refusing to like um accept, like to like in any way give like a consent to like it's like the ideology that is like diametrically opposed to his views. And um the way it's shot, is the way I described it after the fact, was like it very much feels like a memory. Like you like it, things are, there's certain scenes where it's like it intercuts between just like different angles of like the same thing really quickly. And it's not like sci-fi or anything. It's just like a a little Austrian farm town most of the time, or like some city or prison. Um, but it just kind of like it makes you think like, oh wait, is that how it happened, or is this how it happened? Like, are these a sequence of events? Are they just like different people's imaginations of the events? Like these like internal people's perspectives. Like there's some scenes where there's like one where there's like a an officer guy, and he's like all gruff, and he's like, I'm unfazed, things like that. It seems to me kind of what you mean by like you can use film to just like convey the story that you want to tell, but you can also actually use uh the things that you're able to do, like intercut between stuff, use different angles, or like do whatever to like add a kind of like layer of interpretation to it.
Yeah, like how something is shot can be as
Yeah.
important, and potentially maybe even more important than what is shot.
Yeah.
But we are supposed to be getting episode 8, so we better.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
But actually, this is, I mean, this is setting up because there is that tone change during the Echo and Jinx fight, and that is shot very differently from the rest of the film because it wants to convey certain ideas. So I mean, I think that's the reinforcement of. Also, just saying, I'm glad the film agrees with me. We can take a look. Well, as I've said hundreds of times, wait, women are succubi sent by the devil to ruin the lives of good men.
Oh, based Echo.
Mm-hmm.
Based Echo. The only guy actually like doing anything reasonable. Maybe not.
But wait, let's have here. One of the nice
I
ways.
should turn it down. Wait, if I.
Hello.
Hey, did your volume change?
No, it does not change. Interesting.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, this application is just so much better than what we were using before. We can do all sorts of shit.
It's great.
Oh, it's fantastic. But yeah, like this is sort of what like it's not a big deal, but everything they do has like they've like found a way to maximize each little thing for its purpose. So like, boom, boom, there they go. And like they could have done the scene where like they jump together, or like V jumps on Caitlyn and pushes her out of the way, or they could have ducked, or like 100 of different things. But they specifically, to maximize this small thing, they have them flying apart because of course Jinx's whole goal and the reason she's mad and the reason she's shooting at them is because she wants to separate these two people.
Oh.
And so it's like it's a little thing, but each little thing, if you maximize it to sort of the best visual expression of what you're trying to convey, add up. And so it's
kind of thinking like there's no way that there's something like behind this, but like yeah, that totally makes sense. It's literally like just another example of that.
Yeah.
Layers.
And then it also sets up a nice shot for we got Echo coming out from the darkness.
Yeah. It does darken strangely, like it's like it almost.
Yeah, I mean it's probably not super realistic. Like, I mean, if I were to stretch it, I guess it's like it's the bullets that are creating the yeah. It's just there for dramatic effect. That's why it's there.
Just fine. It looks cool.
It's fine. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to, right, you could have it so that right, because the explosion happens, the lights are broken, and there is sort of the flickering on I think one of them a little bit earlier, right? If you really did want to maximize that, you could, where you have like the light fading in and out throughout the scene, and like it dulling a little bit, and then like it flickers to black, then Echo appears and it comes back on. So they've set up the flickering a bit beforehand. So I guess there is a way you could maximize it. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty minor. Just a second, move some stuff around. All right, and here comes. Right, and to be fair, they are doing the light source is sort of set in a way so it looks like it comes from the light. They probably don't do quite enough flickering beforehand to build up for that flash. We can take a look again. Well, I guess they are doing the flickering, right? Yeah, there it is.
Okay, I just now realized that she's not like throwing another. Yeah, she's shooting them. Like I for a second I thought it was a little explosive she threw, but dang, Jinx is not happy.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the darkness is the flickering light. They are setting up for it.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Like
It makes sense, I think.
I didn't realize like what the slow motion was doing, but yeah, that I think I get it.
I think probably the it flickers in the beginning, but for the whole scene before it goes black, it's like bright, and I think that might be like a bit too much time in between, and so it comes a bit. So it would be. I think it might work better is if it was like flickering and dimming, and so as they're coming in, it's like pulsing a bit instead of flickering. So it was just sliding up and down on the brightness scale a little bit. And it goes up and down and up and down. And then as we're coming in for the echo, it goes down. But this time it goes all the way to black. And then echo appears, and then it slides up again. This is sort of the idea of like undercurrents. Like I talk about with Disney songs. The music starts before the song singing does. To sort of glide you into the moment. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect in how they've done that slow motion so that it doesn't quite neatly glide you into it. And so maybe sort of keeps being aware of the flickering nature.
And actually, the fact that it looks good in both contexts, in both like times, in both slow motion and fast motion, is like very impressive. I don't know how much you've seen of the Wheel of Time show. They do a lot of like, the opposite of like slow motion. Like they speed it up whenever the women are like using magic. Like I don't think they're trying to like make it like, oh yeah, we need to speed it up because the characters are just choreographed too slow. It looks like a stylistic choice, but it looks incredibly strange and like just not a good choice. Whereas here, it just seems to be like a really good use of it. And also, Echo has time stuff, so it's cool that their shot is built with that already as well. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but maybe it was.
Yeah, you know what it might be. I haven't seen Wheel of Time, and by what you've described so far, it doesn't sound like it's a show I would want. It doesn't sound like it's a good show.
It's not.
Okay, but I remember I watched an anime once, and they're like, "Well, these people are going at super fast speeds. How do we fix it?" And it's clearly just sped up the footage, because they're all moving faster, and looked terrible. It just looked like it was sped up. And what I think it might be, why I think speeding up doesn't work. It might work if you sped them up. Speed is relative. So is time, but we're not really. But so this, like, for example, a sped up scene will feel wonky. But if you have a scene where everyone is moving at like normal pace, but for example, it's raining out and all the water droplets are frozen in the air, it's going to feel faster. Because we know how fast rain is, and and it's comparatively slow to someone who is moving at normal speed. And so it's through that relative comparison that we draw that sense of speed. This is why like every super fast Flash scene is him just walking around while everyone's frozen because he's just super fast. But yeah, so it might work if like you sped up the individual people, but then kept everything around them like frozen or moving at regular speed or in slow motion. But I don't know. That's something someone would have to try.
Uh,
All right, so what do we think
those
of
are the hex deck. Okay, go on.
what do we think of Echo's entrance?
Hype would be the vibe I'm getting.
Up in your volume a little bit. All right. Yeah. No. I mean, it's a very cool.
There is Yeah.
Too loud. Oopsie doopsie. Okay, so it's a very cool entrance. I'm gonna mute it while I let play in the background a bit. Yeah. And he comes out of the shadows. It's a very epic moment. And then immediately we have Jinx shooting at him, which is not how you treat your friends.
Yes.
I've known Andrew for a very long time, and I've very rarely shot him.
True. I count on one hand the amount of times you shot me. I can't.
I can count on one hand and two hands the amount of times I've shot you. I can count on an infinite amount of hands.
I think you shot me with a water gun at some point. I think that's about it.
Also, the bullet animations are nice, and it's again it's 2D on top of I think they're pure 2D. And they have the
bullets or the kind of
they're not
yellow spark of the bullets.
So I don't think they're actually animating any bullets. I think it's just like which it makes sense. They kind of crumple on impact, and depending on it, they might certain rounds like will crumple. Some will go through. Some will explode. Some will set things on fire. I'm not a bullets expert. Yeah, we have the flash and Echo appears, and yeah, I feel like the flash is a bit too sudden, especially in slow motion. And so I think having like a dimming effect might help with that. And then maybe holding the slow motion for when it goes to black. But yeah, we have Echo coming up, and it's a little we have. I like how they're sort of going about the choreography for the fight. We got Echo here, and he's just doing a baseball swing, which I mean it makes sense, right? He's like a kid. He's like a young kid who grew up on the streets. Probably a sports guy. I don't know if that's true. We haven't seen any indication, but it's not like uncommon for like the demographic. And I like it probably. I assume if there's a manual somewhere. I'm not big. I don't know a ton about club warfare. Not my area of expertise.
he's definitely telegraphing.
All right.
You can say that for sure.
But it sort of makes sense.
Then again, I mean, he is hurling himself towards a woman with a Gatling gun, so telegraphing his strike isn't the worst of our worries here.
I guess not. All right, and I'm not going to say it's like I'm not even sure it's technically a wrong. There's a bow move that's a lot like a baseball swing, but it's like it's not the typical move. But it makes sense, right? He's a kid and he's working with what he's got. What has he got? He's got like a baseball bat, and he knows how to swing a baseball bat. And he's got a skateboard, and so that's what he's going to use. Though it is a bit interesting. We got Jinx leaning back and shooting, and though from a character perspective, I sort of wonder. At this point, is she trying to hit Echo? Or in fact, is she trying to hit anyone? I mean, machine guns.
Interesting question.
Right? Because we know that she is a genuinely good shot.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if she's Caitlyn good, but every time she wanted to shoot something, so far, that wasn't like a person, she's managed to hit it. Right, and we have like the scene. Even as a kid, we have the scene where they have her do like the animatronics, and she blasts them all highly efficiently. So she's a good shot, right? And the anyway, this is a Gatling gun, not a machine gun, but they're not it sends out a lot of bullets over a large area all at once. It's not hard to hit things with the machine gun. Though I guess I'm getting my accounts from World War I, where they're charging over the trenches. So,
I mean, it's a heavy thing, and he's close. Like, it's probably a longer range thing, but I mean,
Sure, but she's not hitting
eh,
V or sorry, Vi or Caitlyn
Caitlyn,
either,
yeah, true. She totally could have just like murdered them if she wanted to, presumably at that point.
right?
So it's an interesting question because I did assume that her shooting senselessly at Echo means she wants to kill Echo, but
Yeah, you're cutting out
right,
again.
because like
But because I'm thinking, because the scene that's going to come up is when she eventually does release the bomb, and the sort of the emotions and the facial expressions that are going through it. Right? It seems like Jinx, at this point, the mesh, at this point, um, had she is a little restrained, and then she'll come into some sort of trauma response, and as a result, will start firing a bit wildly. And at that point, she's just hitting what's around her. Right? The boat, I think, is a good example of this. I mean, she in the boat she is killing people, and then when she goes crazy, she's just shooting everyone. But though she's killing people that she doesn't really know, whereas she she obviously cares about Vi. She does hate Caitlyn, and then Echo's a bit. They used to be very close, and they've sort of diverged.
yeah.
And so I wonder, especially given that sort of the when she eventually does use the bomb, I'm a little curious that I think there could be an interpretation of this scene where like she's angry and she's expressing her anger by shooting towards them but not at them. So she's like, I'm angry and I want to hurt you. And like this is Jinx's equivalent of punching the wall. So she doesn't punch the person. Right?
You know what though? There's a lot of story in between this and the end of episode 3. Could like shed a lot of light on exactly what their
You mean like the gap
evolved, I guess,
between
from
three and
like
four?
the initial between 3 and 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, like it would be interesting. Like I don't know, like I don't know, for some reason, Better Call Saul, like it totally isn't that, but like a sort of like spinoff or something that would be like, here's how Jinx became evil when she was raised by Silco or whatever, and here's why. Because I figure that he'd have reached out to her, right? Like he knew she existed. He knew she wasn't dead sooner than
Well, Silco didn't
Levi
know
was in prison, but
Vi was. Silco thought Vi was dead because Marcus
yeah,
hit her.
what's his name? Sorry, Echo. Echo would have like looked for Jinx eventually, and presumably that wouldn't have been like.
Okay, yeah,
Presumably he would have thought she was dead for a while, but he'd have probably eventually heard of her. But maybe by that point she was already like insane.
yeah. I have sort of mixed feelings about these kinds of like prequels in general and these sorts of spin-offs. Dan Harmon made an interesting point. Well, in relation to Rick and Morty, because Rick and Morty takes place after this giant intergalactic, or not intergalactic, this giant galactic rebellion that's occurred. And you don't get a ton of details, but apparently Rick from Rick and Morty had joined up with a bunch of other guys, and they had gone off and fought the Galactic Federation, and ultimately the Galactic Federation wins. And this all happens in the background. We get hints to this thing that occurred, uh, but not a whole lot of details. And when they asked Dan Harmon about it, he said, "I think it's probably better to leave it as is, so the viewer can sort of imagine it themselves, as opposed to us coming in and giving this determinative timeline that no one really likes, or that."
I yeah, but okay, but why is it that nobody likes it? Is it because it's implausible the way that they want to do it, or is it because people have their own imagination, they don't like how it plays out? Because like people would have liked, for example, like the Star Wars prequels if they were good, right? Like
Mhm.
I think like everybody apparently seems to really like Better Call Saul. I've seen like a few episodes of the show. I don't know, didn't hook me immediately, but maybe I'll watch it eventually. But I don't like that reasoning because a lot of people give that reasoning when they're like, ah, well, we don't know. But like, I sometimes wonder if it's just because do they even have a conception? Like, sure, don't actually like make the show, but you have to know yourself as the writer what did happen. So and this is a good show, so I presume that they weren't just like whatever, we want the plot, so we're just gonna do it. Like we're gonna actually like do the work. Like we know how their story evolved over time. No, we don't necessarily need to show all the details, but we could if we wanted to. Does that make sense?
I think probably I'd put it up to sort of three reasons. One is sort of the space, right? So, like Star Wars, for example, the prequels could have probably been good, but when we're talking about like the Clone Wars, like a war is a massive period of time, right? Like if you wanted to actually go in and learn about like the important like World War II, right? Just to name a war, takes forever to fucking learn about. And so if you're going to do a spin-off that sort of the reason why we have the way it is like this, the reason why they didn't include the wars is because it would be such a big project in comparison to the story you want to tell that it's more time efficient to have it have happened, and then you can reference it and you can talk about what happened in it. But to actually show each individual step would be a large project undertaking, right? So Firefly is like a good example of this, right? We know this war occurred. We know like the sides are and how they sort of relate to each other. We get enough of the gist to understand the story, and we've seen enough rebellions, intergalactic or interstellar rebellions, to figure out roughly what is going on, right? So if you're going to do a spin-off, you sort of that covers the entirety of what is this going to be this massive event. You're going to need like a huge amount of. You're going to need to set aside a ton of time. So like Better Call Saul, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's like a multi-season show. At this point, it's not like a spin-off or a flashback; it's its own project, right?
True.
And if you're going to do that, that means you have to have a writer to do that project, who is either going to have to be the guy who's writing the show, in which case he has two massive projects now, or it has someone else, which you never know how that's going to go. I'd say that's reason one. Reason two is people, before going in, if you've built up this thing, people develop their own headcanons. And once you produce your sort of your story, is going to necessarily conflict with people's headcanons, which is like it's doable, but it's not like a comfortable decision. It's like a bit of an uphill fight, right? This is what I think happened, and it's not quite. And so it can be a bit. You're going to, by definition, fail to meet some of your viewers' expectations, right? It's just going to happen by the nature of solidifying what occurred. And so that can also be a bit difficult. And then can't remember what the third thing was now. But here's like an example. Right, here's an example where like people don't like the prequels, but you know what is pretty popular? The Clone Wars series, right? And that's just covering the Clone Wars, right? But they've, instead of doing a movie, they turn it into a series. They've gotten more bandwidth. They've gotten more bandwidth wasn't the word. They've gotten more space to work with, and they've had like a dedicated team of writers who were apparently. I haven't actually seen the show, but I'm guessing that it was written well because of how popular it was.
There are certainly some very good versions of it. But, it didn't hook me as much as most people, seemingly, but Some of them were like really, really good. A lot of the Darth Maul stuff was really good. The ending was really good.
Yeah. So right, they've increased the sort of the space. They have a dedicated team of writers. That's different from the original, but apparently we're decent enough. And so they were able to go through, right. So increasing the space, having right, those are the three things: having enough space, having the proper writers who can actually do it, right? Because the original writer might be busy with the main project, or if he takes two, that's going to divide his time and will reduce quality. And then three, messing with people's headcanons. So I think prequels can be a bit more difficult to do, and so it is. If you can do all three pieces, go for it. But it's like, especially like Arcane itself, right? It's like 9 episodes. This is right. It's not 13 episodes is a half season, right? So we're working here with like almost 2/3 of half a season. I'm not sure they have the sort of the space to tell that kind of story, right? Yeah, maybe they release like a 26 episode season for Arcane season 2.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, we can revisit this.
But
But
I'm not even saying that they have to like make the show or anything. I'm just saying that like I hope that it's a situation that like the writers thought through. You know what I mean? Like just that like it is a big chunk of time that we skip, but we know where Jace went, right? Like he,
yeah, I
you know,
think what probably happens with most of these sort of things is that they have like a general overview of what happened. Like, this guy was here doing this kind of stuff, and then he did this stuff, and then the war ended. And these guys won because of these basic reasons. And here are some of the key players, and here's kind of what they did. But I think it's like this general overarching idea. I don't think like they could tell you at 5 o'clock on Thursday. Silco's.
I'm okay.
Right.
I'm literally like I'm clearly not
I know. I'm like
making the
illustrating the two extremes.
yeah.
Right.
It's just because like the thing is though, right? Like a lot of people, and like myself included to a point. Like I'm wondering like what the heck did Echo do in the meantime? Because like we have this nice emotional payoff of like him like flashing back to like when they were kids and stuff, and like we have a bit of them like hanging out as kids. We know clearly they have a little bit of similarity with. I think they're the closest in age, if I'm not mistaken. But like now we have a flashback to like okay, this is they used to have this game and this reminds them of that and stuff. But like how like that, I feel like and maybe this is unnecessary, but I think if we knew more about that and if we had more opportunities to of like what did kind of get between them and stuff in their friendship, like
Well, we have
ways that may have played out.
the
You
music
couldn't.
video for the Imagine Dragons song, which is animated by the same company and displays
That's not in the.
the show. It should be in the show.
Yeah. And it's a little unfortunate because like you do want that reveal that like the firelight is Echo, which is cool. I do think that's a nice reveal. Um,
I think they give us enough to get like a rough idea of what's happened. Right? We know
I
Echo.
think maybe what I would want to do is instead of like the cool firelight kind of uh rap intro, I guess. Wait, no, hold on, because that is when they introduce it, isn't it? That's when they reveal Echo right after that like rap,
Yep.
right? They
Yep.
don't. Yeah, okay. So I wonder if you can do this. Like, okay, before the episode, you just shoot like you don't do your cold open. You just do like, okay, Echo reveals himself. It's that scene that plays out. Cut to black, whatever. Do 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 do. do your fun, Arcane statue song video. And then flashback, a little scene of like Echo and Jinx. Maybe it just wouldn't have fit. Maybe it doesn't make sense. But I wonder what, like, I would have wanted a little bit more.
Maybe
And yeah.
so like well, I mean, you've read my book, and I'm very opposed in it giving you a ton of like the backstory information, as you remember, right? But I've expanded a little bit precisely because you had those criticisms. I feel like Arcane has given you just enough to figure out like the basics, right? Like we know what we know after the explosion. We know Echo leaves and at some point starts the Fireflies. And we know he tries to build up this alternate society as Silco takes over. We know at some point, right, for obvious reasons, he's going to attack Silco. And we know he's been attacking Silco because of episode 4. And so it's inevitable that at some point he's going to run into Jinx. Because, of course, she's, like, strong, and Silco's going to use her. And if we know that they've had some sort of altercation. And we knowing who Echo is, right? What's the first thing he does when he meets Vi? He takes off the mask, and that's after he's Jade. So he's probably attempted to have a conversation with Jinx. It's certainly gone nowhere. And we know Jinx has no qualms about killing Fireflies, who are Echo's friends. So obviously he's not going to be the most pleased with her. So I think we have like a basic framework of how this friendship has evolved. Right? He started this group.
I guess so.
Jinx is killing this group. He tries to stop her, has some sort of conversation. It doesn't work out. She keeps killing his friends. And then we have the conversation where he's like, you can't change her. And we know he's right because he's tried.
It's true. That is true. We do have that conversation. I think that's probably the most telling, the most like that link. Okay, yeah. I think that is enough actually. That I was beginning to think of like the extreme example of the contrary when you just have nothing, like Fallout 4, my son, and then your son shows up at the end and he's like old and it's like, oh, son. but
yeah, no, I felt the same way with the
do that and
Police sequel. At the end, they reveal like this character was upset that like her dad left, and this father has never been mentioned anywhere in the series at any point.
Oh,
like,
that's exactly what I mean. That's the sort of thing that like really frustrates me when like I bust out an emotion at the end before it, like, I don't know, because you didn't think about it earlier.
Right. Yeah, I think like my philosophy has always been like less is more. I think a lot of the time, because I think it's important to have sort of that room for interpretation as well. If we can figure out basically all the important stuff of this sort of relationship without us having to go through it, it's a more efficient story that way, right? And no one besides you has read the novella, but like, while it never tells you like the exact backstory of what occurred, especially in sort of the later versions. You can figure out like a basic idea of what's happened to this character to have him arrive at the place he's arrived. And I think similarly, we have enough with Jinx and Echo for them to arrive where they arrived, whereas you have to give those hints, right? They're like these little pieces of information that you can Sherlock put them together to create this sort of rough picture of what occurred. And I think putting that sort of mystery together a little bit is part of the fun of engaging with the story, right? As opposed to, and this is why, what's his name? The guy who fucked up the Avatar movie, Balan. This is why the Shyamalan twist was so popular, because he gave you all the hints, and then at the reveal, you saw how they all fit together. And so, but the hints have to be present. If you just do the reveal without any of the hints, it just comes out of nowhere. And it's like, what the fuck was this?
Well, that's why I love Primer so much, man. Because it's like, oh, of course he has a freaking like failsafe, and then like, wait a second, of course the other guy went farther back, like that, like wow, and then it's like, oh my gosh, their hands are twitching. Of course their hands are twitching. Like, like all this stuff that is just there and it's just subtle and it's like, yeah, all of this is in place.
Yeah.
Love
So
it. I love it.
whereas like on the other extreme, where like he comes and reveals, especially if it's like Invincible had this, where like they reveal that his girlfriend knew that he was invincible the entire time. But the problem is none of her previous actions make any fucking sense now.
Right, because didn't she like I haven't seen the full show, I've seen a few episodes, but it's like she's very angry with him a lot of the time, right?
Right, she's mad at him because whenever a bad guy shows up, he runs away. Actually, it's two things. One, it's that, and two, he keeps disappearing for long periods of time. And what doesn't fucking make sense is if she knows that he's invincible, she knows why he's gone, first of all. Which, you could make an argument that, like, listen, even if she knows that he's gone, and that thing is for a good reason, being gone for a significant period of time from your significant other is stressful in the relationship. And it can work as a good story, because it did in the original Invincible. This is what happens with Amber. Right? Amber's like super, or I might be misremembering, but Amber's like initially in the comics, she's super thrilled. And eventually, like, being the superhero puts enough strain on the relationship that they sort of separate. But Amber is mad because he keeps disappearing, and he keeps being late for stuff. Because he keeps getting, like, sidelined by superheroes. It's the Flash dilemma, or the Spider-Man dilemma. But what breaks them up, essentially, at the beginning, is this supervillain shows up. And she's running away, and she's like, where's Mark? And Mark has disappeared, and he's left her. And then Invincible shows up, who of course is Mark, and beats up and saves everyone. And she's mad at him for running away. When of course he has to run away. You know this because he's invincible, and he has to change into the costume. You know this. Why? Why are you like this?
Yeah.
Right, which is why there's a YouTuber I like called Unique Nameosaurus, who did like an alternative version where he gives an alternative possible reason, which would make which was a lot better, where he's like, it would make more sense if she was mad for him for not being cowardly enough. And that would be a great reveal. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, you're a superhero. Your secret identity puts both you and me in jeopardy. Right? You should be displaying no signs of bravery at any point. No one should believe you're capable of being a superhero. Every time someone shows up, you should scream like a little girl and run for it. Right? In fact, it might not even been a good idea for you to fight him there at the university, because if Invincible keeps showing up where you happen to be, somebody's going to put two and two together. Right? That would have been a really unique take and a really interesting take. And then, but, what are you going to do? I hear apparently there's a similar thing that happens in, like, the Superman anime. I have not watched it.
Superman anime? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's a Superman anime with the Tom girl Lois Lane that everyone loves.
Oh my goodness.
But apparently she pulls like an Amber, and everyone fucking hated it for a while. I don't know the details. I haven't seen the show. But yeah, so when doing the reveal, you have to put hints first so that the reveal makes sense, and it has to not contradict anything prior. So
if you can do it without treating it like a hint either, but just treat it as like an obvious thing that's required to happen, that's even better.
Yeah,
very hard to do, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I think for the reveal, the big thing is it has to not contradict anything previously and make sense. Whereas if you want this sort of emotional payoff, there's probably got to be some sort of hints. Though I suppose you could do No, I feel like there's probably like you could do a thing where like there's this mentor character who like betrays you, and it like makes sense. But I think it's got to have. I think the hints are important because it makes it feel more grounded. Like fucking Nina from Full Metal Alchemist. You don't get any hints that the guy is sort of like about what's going to happen. Spoiler alert for Full Metal Alchemist. If you haven't seen it, it is one of the greatest animes of all time. Do you know the Nina thing? And if not, do you want me to spoil it?
Go ahead.
Okay. So he goes to this other. Ed spends some time with this other state alchemist who specializes in chimeras, and he spends a ton of time there with him and his daughter and the dog. And it's like this. He spends a fair bit of time there, and it's like this big amount where you get like attached to all these characters. And while this is all happening, the state alchemist guy keeps doing this research on chimeras, and his chimeras keep having issues. Right? He keeps getting the state funding for it, but there's tons of issues with it. Like the closest he gets is he makes a chimera, and it only says 2 words, which is "kill me." It just begs to die because that's how like messed up the existence of the chimera is in this sort of conceptualized universe. And so like there's this whole thing where he's like hanging out with these kids and he's learning about alchemy from this guy. I can't remember all the details now. It's been a long time. But there's this big thing where you're spending all these time and you grow to love these characters. Then like it's a cute little girl and the dog is like slightly bigger than you because she's so small, or it's slightly bigger than her because it's so small, and it's adorable. And eventually one day he comes home, or Ed comes to the place, and he can't find Nina or the dog anywhere. And eventually he comes into the basement where like the father guy is, who's finally made his chimera, a working like proper chimera. And he looks at this chimera that looks like this fusion between this white dog and this girl, and the chimera looks at him like this torturous expression. It's in an incredible amount of pain, and it says Ed in Nina's voice, and you put it together that he's made this fucking abomination out of his daughter and dog.
Oh my gosh.
Right, and it in hindsight it makes sense, right? Working with chimeras is creating these horrific abominations that want to die because their existence is so painful. And despite that, he keeps trying to make them and keeps experimenting on them. And he's becoming more and more desperate over the course of the series. But you never like conceive that he's going to do it to his kid. You think like it's leading you to believe that the experiments are going to go nowhere and the state's going to like drop him or whatever. And then you have this moment where he fucking does this to his daughter and dog, and they have no choice but to put it down.
Oh my goodness.
Right, it's
so fricked.
Yeah. It's like it's a moment. But part of the reason that hits so hard is because partially because you've built up this relationship with these characters and you like these characters, specifically because you think they're all great guys. And then he does this like horrific, monstrous thing. And like hindsight 2020, you should have seen the science coming. But you didn't. This is why Griffith is my favorite villain of anything ever. Right? Griffith's I've talked about it before, but Griffith is such a phenomenal villain because his character is like a combination. He's like a messianic Alexander the Great. And he's a highly virtuous character. And you agree with every one of his virtues. And they're all things to be emulated. And then, by following these virtues that he's previously espoused and that you've previously agreed with, he commits like the most heinous acts imaginable. And you're sitting there on the night of the eclipse, like, how the fuck did we get here? And you go over all the pieces, and like, no, everything follows through. It's logically coherent. And we've ended up at the worst possible place imaginable.
What's this called?
This is Berserk. Berserk
Sure.
is the one with Griffith, and it is phenomenal. I would say Berserk is one of the most important, one of the best, and also one of the most important works of literature from the 20th century. Though Berserk did
Wow.
carry into the 21st. But like,
Wait, is this the one with the big swords?
Yes,
This is the one
yes.
with the big swords. Okay.
right, I would say probably Lord of the Rings is probably a bit more important and influential. Um, Berserk is definitely top five. I'd probably put it in top three. It's hard. There's a lot of stuff that came out 20th century. I'd probably put it in top three. I might have to give like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep as second, just because
Yeah.
cyberpunk.
Yeah, that's up there for sure.
But Berserk, I'd probably put in top three. It's definitely top five. It would be a touchstone work, which is a very specific literary criticism term. But twist, you have to build up to it in a way that the audience doesn't realize that's what you're doing. That's what I think the key is. Right, Griffiths is built up to be this sort of messianic Alexander who's going to literally save the world. And then he has the Night of the Eclipse, and you're like, I get how he got here. But I was on board like the entire time up until now. How did I get sucked into the fascist movement, so to speak? Though to be fair, I'm not. Griffiths probably can't be described as fascist. He's some sort of like it'd be difficult to pinpoint like a political ideology on him. But yeah, or like with Fullmetal Alchemists, he was our guy. What happened? How did he turn this daughter and dog, who were also our guys, TM, into this fucking abomination? Jesus Christ! I need to get some holy water and gouge my eyes out. Jeez, Lord mercy. But yeah, so I think the hits are sort of necessary because there has to be some sort of foundation that the payoff is built on. And Jesus Christ, are we going to get to episode 8? I might have to change all the tags in the title.
We're not gonna get to episode 8.
Oh fuck me.
Let's do the cool thing because I like the cool thing.
And there we go. He's
cool.
Okay, are you pressing buttons here? Skipping all over for me.
Oh, I'm not. I ain't pressing nothing.
Okay, but he could have like clocked. He could have just swung the club into her head and like he could have made a skull bash attempt. But instead,
that's true.
He took the stuff and told him to go. And so there's probably two ways to interpret that. I think one is he also doesn't want to hurt Jinx. Right, despite everything, they're still he's internally conflicted and has some difficulty attempting to kill someone who he at least one point cared about deeply. And then the other interpretation I can think of is the worst day in Echo's life was when he had to watch one of his family members die. When fucking Decker, is it? Goes beast mode and kills oh, now I can't remember the names. Who's Vander's friends? Echo's adoptive dad. Right? And he has to watch his adoptive dad get killed. And so in his mind, he might be a bit hesitant because Vi's right there watching him. And so he might, at least on a subconscious level, be thinking, do I really want to do to her what happened to me by killing her like one remaining family member who she obviously still cares about? Or number 3 could be a combination of both things. Those are like the impossible interpretations. Do you have any alternatives or any disagreements? Okay, I can't hear you, so I'm going to assume you good.
Yeah, I might have cut out. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Cool.
right? Because he's gearing up for a swing and then takes the thing instead.
Wait, did he not just whack her? I thought he just whacked her. He took. Okay, he swung the thing off of her.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then he loses the board, which is not
Huh.
ideal. So I wonder
Oh.
if, like, maybe he was going to go for the headshot, and then at the last second changed his mind, grabbed the thing instead, and that fucked up his whole exit. Maybe.
Yeah.
Right? He looks, even the facial expression, when we see him. Nope. Let's go back a bit. Right? Because that landing does not look hyper controlled, and then we have like this angry expression on him, which could be because he's mad at Jinx for killing all his friends, but it could be like a self thing, like, god damn. It could just be like frustration with like these internal conflicts he's having.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons for him to be angry at this point.
Yeah. As well, he has to give up, like, his ace card was he had to be there, and now he's giving that up to fight Jinx. That's also probably a little frustrating. And it turns out he was fucking right. The didn't really do anything to help until like the very end when it's too late.
Cut out for me there. The last bit you said. Like, turns out he was right.
Yeah, like, I mean, ultimately, he doesn't get much of a say, and the Piltovers aren't really concerned with the Zonites as much as they are getting rid of Silco. So in some way, he was right to show up, because he could have made his perspective known, and could have withheld the stone if they weren't willing to play ball. Whereas, ultimately, what just happens is, Jace goes on the warpath, and starts killing children.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It was one time! But it's not until like it's too late that they actually try to do something that resolves the conflict. And so, in some ways, Jinx or Echo was probably right to put that as a stipulation, right? Because he could have used the stone as leverage. But you know. Maybe, you know, listen. You're trying to take what I've rightfully stolen. One of my favorite.
Was that
Princess Bride?
Oh.
When he sits down to do the cup game, and he's like, "You're trying to take what I've rightfully stolen." It was such a good character too. That's what we should do next. Princess Brides. Oh, you haven't? Is so good. But I still have to edit Spirited Away. Jeez, maybe I should just hire an editor.
Oh man. Well,
I feel like
hire an intern. Be cheaper.
So I think like the recordings, like it's like in the hours, so I'd imagine it probably costs a lot. This is why we live stream these. I would not have. These aren't getting edited. It takes way too long.
Yeah. No, we should definitely like just be live streaming until at least until like, you know, you don't want to be probably doing two massive ones at once.
Yeah, I haven't even fucking touched these in a while. I've been so preoccupied with the card game and the book and everything. Jeez. The issue is probably I can't run Lightworks off my laptop. I can barely run Photoshop on it, so I have to do editing on my computer, on my PC. And a lot of the work I do at my job. So if it doesn't run on the laptop, it doesn't really get done that well. But we'll see. I'll try to put some time aside, like a day, to edit something. Especially now that the card game is almost done. But back to the series. Vi doesn't want to leave. I think she's tearing up a little bit. Maybe it's just the light, but ultimately, she's, and this is part of what I think is driving Jinx is Jinx is going to see her leaving again, right? Vi is going to say, well, greater good and all that, and I gotta save her. But from Jinx's perspective, she's leaving again with Succubi Devil Caitlyn, which is not her optimal result from her perspective, but what are you gonna do? And this is sort of we've seen this with Savika a little bit. Her defense mechanism is whenever she gets really upset, she starts laughing, and then says something a little aggressive. Right, with Savika, she does like the funny bits and then ties her to the fucking ceiling and whatnot. And once again, we have this pivotal moment where Vi leaves her again, and then Jinx does the he fuck you, Echo. Get the bitch, move out the way.
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder if it's intentional that she has that in common with her. By the way, already I have something to say about this. So, I watched recently a YouTube video where a guy tried to replicate this animation because I was looking up like different things for like face animations and stuff, and there's so many like subtle movements even in just that. And also, one guy commented like I didn't notice this, but when the guy replicated it, he actually didn't do the camera right. And he just kind of had it like handheld. It looked handheld. It was a little bit shaky. But if you look at this, it's the camera is static. And then Echo looks down, and the camera follows him, and then static again. And he looks up, and pointed out to me, it's like that's actually kind of it's not insignificant to like change the decision to make it instead of static, like shaky, for example. Like
Yeah.
I think the camera use here is very, very like very good and very like punchy emotionally because it's like almost claustrophobic, like you're stuck, it's not moving.
Yeah, like we said earlier, sometimes how you shoot can be as important as what you shoot.
Yep.
And then there's the obvious facial change. He was very angry, and then he has the smirk. And I think this is just nostalgia. He's remembering we've been in this place before so many times, starting when we were kids, and he's remembering some of those fond memories. And sometimes I think it's a combination of this remembrance of bad, and sometimes things are just so bad all you can do is laugh. I think it's a combination of those those two. Like Jesus Christ, how do we even get here? Within the ticking, right? And this is what I said about the Disney movie. They start the ticking first, and the music starts slowly coming in underneath the actual interaction to prep you for when the music is going to start.
Gotcha. Interesting.
And also, I just noticed this. Let's pay attention to the way. Where is it? Yeah, the way she nods her head. She moves her head from side to side in beat with the ticking.
Yep.
Which I thought, it's a little touch, but it's not. Right, and this is more of the underlying thing I was talking about. But that's with Disney movies. The loading of her gun, the reloading of her gun, the sounds of it follow the beats of the song.
It's true. I like that. It also it's interesting that like this one little thing puts Echo in control too. Like just the fact that he's aware of the timing and things like that. He knows he's very good at doing that sort of thing. But, and at the same time, Jinx is extremely good at shooting. So it's interesting that like you wouldn't think someone would have. The one thing that I guess confuses me just a little bit about this is like it. Then again, at the same time, we seen that she does have difficulty with this because like Echo is apparently like the one guy who's like really good at dodging bullets. She cannot, for the life of her, shoot Echo, no matter how much she tries. But usually she's quite good at shooting people.
Yeah. One of the other things I want to note is the watch in this scene. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, I'm gonna mute it on my end so I can talk over. But when he does the watch, it's moving, of course, in beat with the tick, but it's also he's moving it like it's you know, keep your eyes on the watch. It's hypnotism,
Yes.
right? Because he's
Yes,
essentially
absolutely.
casting this sort of nostalgic spell that we're going to see, giving this sort of hallucination of this old reality. And so I think it works on sort of both levels. And then the transition's nice there. Okay.
Not like seeing each other from like a friendship perspective by any means. It's just like
Right, it's this moment that they have that they grew up together doing this as this sort of this play fighting because they would need to use it later. But now they're using against each other, which they never thought they were going to have to.
mm,
Right, and then of course we have Echo, who's like coming in with the spirit animal of the firelight, which makes sense. And then Jinx is coming in with her spirit animal of the crow, which I think probably is going to be a bit relevant later, because
where did that show up? I missed that.
well, it's on the screen right now. It's behind Echo.
I'm seeing a top-down view of.
Okay, let's go back. It's right after Echo and his firelight. Right there's his
Okay,
firelight,
there we go. There, yeah.
and then there's the crow.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I never noticed that.
I think the crow is sort of a symbol we've talked about, like how I interpret the symbolism. It is almost certainly, in fact, I'll say it's certainly a hint for later, right? Leak has lore stuff related to the crows, and so
Okay.
this is somewhat of a like, I don't know the details. I didn't want to spoil it for myself, but
Sure.
this symbolism is going to be important in. Well, it's getting a little choppy for me. Might be a little overloaded.
It's okay for me still.
Okay, well I've muted it so we can talk a little bit over it. Um, yeah, I like a lot of the artistry a fair bit. Or not the artistry. The colors are nice, right? They've highlighted
Yeah.
very definitive colors, and we have the rainbow bullet is kind of hilarious. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the point is, sorry, just a sec. I think the point is two things. One is to highlight these important features within the stylistic nature of the shot, but also two, by having like a rainbow bullet, I think it's supposed to play on the innocence of this game they played as a kid and remembering that time, which is going to juxtapose later when we Eminem snap back to reality.
Yeah. It's a very strong contrast for sure.
Right, and yeah, I like the switching between like the two ages. Right, it's sort of, I think, trying to communicate that in that moment they're sort of existing both in like the present as well as in the past, which is sort of important because, of course, from Echo's perspective, his whole thing is wrapped up in time. Um, part of the issue is how they've gotten to where they are is because of what occurred in their past that set them on these very divergent life routes. And so part of it is sort of this reflection, I think, especially as we relate it to earlier when, how the fuck did we even get here? Right? That sort of, that smile. This is sort of them remembering this process by which they've come to where they are. And I think that relates a bit to the song. But I want to let you talk a bit about how I'm gonna let you talk a bit first, so I can. Unless there's something you want to say.
The only thing that comes to my mind, you mentioned this with like like the rainbow bullet. Like what's happening here is it's kind of everything's kind of red, but it's all desaturated red, like orange, like um. Then the pops of color are the bullet and like her hair, which is I'm 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 not sure what to make of that, but it's definitely intentional. I guess it's just like the youthful elements, like the just highlighting the like, oh yeah, look, it's Jinx the way she looked like when she was normal and not insane, and innocent like you were saying, and then also bullet, she's I don't know if it's like paintball or like a water
Probably a paintball.
juxtap.
Oh, I think you're cutting out a bit. Hello? I think as well part of it. Well, I think the scene is, especially with the. Actually, let's get a bit more before I talk about the next thing I want to talk about.
Sure.
It's also an obvious juxtaposition between their expressions, like adult Jinx and adult Echo are obviously like the kid versions are having fun. This is play, whereas when we switch to the adult ones, like Echo's got let's right, they're a lot more serious. Right, they're happy and playing. But when we go to Echo, we obviously have a much more serious expression.
Yeah. Desperately trying to not get shot.
And this also has probably my favorite line from the song as it relates to the show, which is "Thought you had my number, huh? Congratulations, you played yourself," which I think represents the scene pretty well because they're starting off, and what we learn is that every time, or the implication is every time they've done this as kids, Jinx has shot him. Because fun fact, the science is in. Guns are faster.
Yes, that's very true.
Right?
Very true.
And so coming into this fight, Echo's lost, or it doesn't directly say, but I think the implication that we can draw from this, especially knowing what Echo and Jinx were like as kids, is Echo's lost this fight every time before now. And so that line really works because it sort of implies like you thought you knew how to do. We've done this, and you thought you were going to win because you've done this so many times, and you figured just like a bike, shooting Echo is just like a bike, right? But what I think the big difference is, and what both the scene and the song are trying to illustrate is, they've had these events happen to them, and Jinx essentially is still stuck there. Right, she's grown up, but her psyche is still stuck in that warehouse from episode 3 when she sets off the bomb. She hasn't been able to move past that. Whereas Echo,
after all these years,
right? Echo losing Benzo sucked. Yes, I've remembered his name now. Losing Benzo sucked, but he's dealt with it, and he's moved on.
He's grown from it,
and he's grown. Right, and that's why he's going to win this fight, because while Jinx could beat Child Echo, he's not Child Echo anymore. Whereas Jinx still, at least, is still. That's part of why I like that line. It's like, you thought you had my number. You thought you knew me. You thought you were fighting Kid Echo, and you're not, and that's why you're going to lose this. You've played yourself.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I never look at it from that angle. I think you nailed it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I did not see the firelight or the crow before.
Yeah, every
Yeah,
time you notice a new thing.
and Echo was like, "Oh my goodness, I have to do flips to dodge these bullets."
Mhm.
Boy, Echo's shot.
Right, and so he's remembering here that he's lost every time, and he's
Yeah,
been
and
trying.
he's also like learned from these, right? Like he's able to,
Yeah, he's grown.
because the implication that he knows how to like time her, like he generally knows how she operates with like timing and stuff.
Yeah, he's got her thing down to like to a precise science almost,
Yeah,
right? And this also I thought was what they're about to do. I think is really interesting because of course, Echo's ability is in the game is the Z drive. He can just reverse time, which wouldn't work here in Arcane because one, he hasn't built it yet, and that'd be like insanely overpowered compared to the rest of the cast. They're not really ready for
absolutely.
that yet. Right? When Victor gets his giant lasers and whatnot, then he'll probably get the Z drive, and everyone will have. But so the writing staff is like, well, okay, we want to do. How can we? Because Jinx gets her ulti at the end of the series, but this is going to be Echo's last big scene. So this is their last chance this season to give him an ulti. So how do we give him his ulti without giving him his ulti? And I think this was like a brilliant way to do it. Right?
It's brilliant.
He has the scene where they do what is essentially do the fight. Right? But it's not like this isn't actually occurring as it is, because immediately what's going to happen, right? It's rewind time. Snap back to reality. Right? But what's so cool about this is what is actually happening is Echo is remembering they've had this fight so many times before. Echo's remembering it. He's remembered how he lost it. He's grown from that, and now when he's doing this fight, he's perfectly timed everything, and he's going to get around. And he's going to win. And so they've managed to show off his ulti, his time reversal techniques by having like this flashback here of the exact fight that they've had so many times before, and then reversed it. Right, he breaks the watch, rewind time, comes back, and we're going to see the fight. Now that he's learned, and he's grown as a person, as he's learned more, right? Like how the ulti works, he has this fight, he learns from that fight, he reverses time, and then fights again. And so, like that, it's sort of a symbology. It's sort of symbol for having learned from all these things in this past, and specifically the misfortunes in his past. Right? He's learned from having to lose these fights. He's learned from losing Benzo. He's learned from losing all these people he's cared about, and he's grown as a result. Whereas Jinx keeps the fucking mannequins of them, and they're still sort of with her, except in real speed. And oh, there was a chop. Wait, and then we reverse. And it's the same movements. The same.
Oh, it is the same?
Yeah, so the movements in the music part are the same ones, right? He runs, he dodges, he jumps, and he tries to hit her.
Interesting. Okay, I forgot about the fact that that it does the kind of rewind thing. Not that it just we end off with this, but yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense.
And boom. And once again, we have sort of the theme of the show, the brutality of violence. Right? We have this
Yeah.
sort of this game, and this is very much, I think, part of how, like, as kids they would see it, right? Like, Vi was always getting the fight, and there was sort of this cartoony sort of thought of how it would work. How we'd break in and we'll steal everything. Some guy tries to take our money, we'll beat him up. right? And likewise, when they're kids and having this fight, they're like, oh, we'll just shoot each other and hit each other with these fake swords. It's like real violence. And then whenever anyone's confronted with real violence, it's very different, right? The fight's the exact same, but there's a lot more brutality and a sort of more to it. When he's there on top of her, smashing her shit in. I think the part of that is why we have this scene where we're now like what Echo has to figure out what he's going to do, right? Because she's getting beaten up and looks terrible and looks perfectly sad. And this was this person that he cared about, and to some degree, probably still there's some lingering feelings somewhere.
Echo is definitely in the how do we get here kind of mentality.
Well, except now it's like instead of like a Jesus Christ, how do we get here? It's more of a Jesus fucking Christ. How the hell did we get here? How did we get here? Like she looks like she's on the verge of crying. He looks like he's on the verge of crying. Everyone's having a breakdown right now. And unfortunately for Echo, this is a moment of weakness. And what's going to happen? He can't do it, and
it's gonna pick up on it.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious if like does she actually like give a crap, or like is she just like I'm gonna be all sentimental and make him be all sentimental to like exploit the opportunity to strike?
I think Jinx
like in the moment
has very poor emotional control. And so
True.
I think generally when she is when an emotion is being expressed from Jinx is the attempt to hide the emotions. And I think that's her best attempt, and it's very obvious. So I think, like in this scene, when she has that slight smile, I think it's because she feels, to some degree, a little happy that Echo still cares about her, despite everything. Because right now, she feels like no one cares about her. Right? Vi's left her, and she's always worried that Silco is going to think she's useless. And so I think she does have a little bit of happiness that Echo has to hesitate because somewhere deep down inside he has some degree of care for her. Unfortunately, that's not enough to stop her.
Gotcha. Okay. I, for some reason, remembered this is her, like, smirking at the end of that, but no, she was very much like, oh, yeah.
She has, like, the smirk in the middle, where she, like, slightly smiles, and then then it goes, and she releases and then she goes full jihadi.
Yep. And, of course, this is the scene where Echo die. Because they just took an explosion to the face.
Kill off an important lead character.
But legit, like they're dead. Like they totally should have died in that. That's the one thing that I think like they absolutely should be dead right now.
So I'll offer
way too close. Those are right next to them.
But that's going to be their justification, right? He saw the bomb, he moved out of the way, and as a result, he was only seriously injured.
But she's alive.
Well, hold on. She is going to die. It's only because of the intervention of the doctor that gives her the drugs, right? And my position is, I think I've said it before, you can do whatever you want with you can have them survive absurd, ridiculous things. It doesn't matter, but right, you have to pay some sort of price for doing that.
Totally.
Right? So if I'm going to like revive a character from the dead, that's fine. You can do that. But you got to do the alchemist law of equivalent exchange. So if I'm going to raise someone from the dead, something of equal value to that character must be sacrificed by someone doing the raising. Likewise here, we're essentially Jinx is going to die. We are preventing that. And the sacrifice that is made is what's left of her sanity. Essentially, they fucking drug her up, give her like these slight superpowers, and as a result of it, her sort of mental faculties just collapse, and we get the tea party.
Yeah. Yeah, and Silco and wanting to keep her alive at all costs and not wanting to lose her.
Right, like he loses.
Also kinda
Silco
paying
loses
the price
everything.
for that, right? Yeah.
He loses literally everything to do that.
Yep.
So I think there's enough of an equivalent sacrifice for it to work. Echo,
Oh, for sure.
Echo, I think is a bit more of a stretch. But I would have liked to see something a bit more permanent. But it is what it is. Oh, and we also one thing.
Yeah, she's toast.
I want to look at V's expression a little bit here, or Vi.
All right.
Right, because obviously we got the wide-eyed horror.
Yep. Oh, and I will have to get going after this.
Okay, so I'm just going to have to change it to 7. Okay,
Sorry.
and it's fine. But yeah, we got the wide eyes, and I think I don't know. What do you think of She's going to do like a cheek throat thing. Line. So here,
She's gonna do a what?
watch the cheeks.
Okay.
And maybe the throat a little bit. Right.
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy. That's legitimately like that they must have a shape key for the throat for like emotional stuff. Like what? It's insane.
Yeah. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
I'm still trying to figure out what I think specifically that is. Whether that's her like gulping or suppressing like a sad sputter, or like maybe she was about to be sick, like Jace was, and she's suppressing that. But yeah, it's like a very very small touch, but it adds. You might not have noticed, but your brain did.
That's crazy. This is like the kind of thing where I see this, I'm like, all right, Fortiche has proven to me that like I don't deserve to like animate. Like I could never like even think of such things. Like that's insane. That's so good.
It's kind of insane. I rewatched the first the Jinx video, like the first music video they ever released, and I remember it being like pretty awesome and insane at the time. And now going back, it's not Arcane, obviously, but I remember at the time it was like kind of insane. But they've gotten so much better in that time.
Mm.
And it's because Riot was like, this is our company. This is the company we want for the animations. And so that's what they did, and they stuck with it, and they managed to do this, and it's insane. Also, there's a nice touch of the broken watch. Because of course, at the end of the kid fight, the watch breaks when he throws it on the ground. It's also supposed to be like Echo got caught in the blast, and it's broken now, so he's probably hurt. But also, the time is stuck, which is which I think is supposed to be a bit of a metaphor, or not only because Jinx is essentially stuck in time. Echo and Jinx are also kind of stuck in time, right? They're reliving the same fight that they've had since they were kids, right? And once again, Vi is leaving Jinx like on that day, and so everything just feels like we're back at those points in our past. Like we have this element of being stuck in time, and I think this is the shot the episode ends on as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good stuff, man. I love it. I love it. This is definitely up there for me in terms of favorite episodes too.
Yeah. It was fantastic.
were there any final closing thoughts you wanted to add?
And I don't know. I'm just like I want to make something like this one day. like to be honest, I wish I could. That'd be great. I'm like I think Arcane is what really planted the seed in me to be like I really want to figure out how to do this at least like Air Obscure is not a good game. It's a tiny little game. It's like, oh cool, I made a game, and like I don't know, maybe I will make like some sort of little animation or something after this. Like it's cool, it's achieved that of like making some random guy interested.
Yeah.
Sorry, my alarm's going off in the
I
background. I
heard.
don't know if you can hear that. I'll mute myself.
That's all good. Yeah. I mean, this is part of great art inspires everyone, right? Like, there's a reason a ton of fantasy is based off Token, a ton of cyberpunk's based off Electric Sheep, ton of stuff is based off Berserk, right? Great art inspires and sort of continues on its legacy through the people it inspires. I guess last notes. I feel like I didn't talk a whole lot about the song, and that's kind of a staple of the show, except for the Imagine Dragons, which I think we both felt didn't really relate that well. I think Dynasties and Dystopias, in Dystopia, kind of relates pretty well from like Echo's perspective. The song is kind of about growing up in like a poor neighborhood and how difficult things are, which I think we all agree Echo definitely did. He's not Caitlyn, right? Let's pause that. And so, right, there's lots of lines about causing trouble, and there's some I think that are references to Jinx, like I might just kick your butt, go run amok, then paint my nails. And so there's references to the two of them. I like Gothic Underground. I think that's a cool reference. But obviously, right, it's about growing up in this sort of society that is very difficult and very what's the word? That's very rough, right? Which makes sense given the context of the scene, because the entire thing is about them reliving their childhood in this terrible, rough environment that has led them to this moment, and how they've grown up, and the sort of lessons they've learned from it. And then it crescendos. I don't think they use the whole song, but the part where it crescendos in the show is, of course, Echo saying, thought you had my number. He's like, those things happened to us, and I've learned from them, and you haven't. Which is what I think the song in conjunction with the scene does, which is like we've said previously why he wins. Well, I mean, he does get blown up at the end, so but still. But we'll get to see the fallout from that, the results of this fight, and how it will go on to affect the ending in the next episode of Arcane, which will be next week, I assume, unless something happens.
Yeah.
All right, episode 8, which was supposed to start this week, I'll have to change some stuff, but it's all good.
We will one day finish this show.
We will, and maybe if we're lucky, we'll finish it in time for season 2.
That would be something.
That would be. When does season 2 release? Because I think it was supposed to release like soonish, but it got delayed due to the virus.
Arcane season 2 will bring back this dead character reveal star, and it's just a picture of Jinx. What?
I can guess who they're going to bring back, but I don't know if you want me to spoil it. I'm confident with 85% certainty. I can tell you which character they're going to bring back.
It's gonna be Vander without a doubt.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Release date season 2. Do we have
I just love how they put a picture of like the one character that's unambiguously alive. Like
All right, I'm looking. It says, it says they're having a labor strike. So, looking at like
Oh my goodness.
2024. Which
Oh,
who knows?
wow.
we might have to wait. We might finish it just as season 2 comes out, which would be hilarious.
We'll release episode 9 part 12, and then they're gonna release season 2.
Here's what will actually probably be an interesting question. When we finish it, Arcane is probably going to be released relatively soon after. And by relatively soon, I mean that if we're going to do another series like this between Arcane seasons, we would have to consider how long that would take. Right? Like, if we're going to do... Like, we couldn't do Alchemist, for example, because it'd just be too long. As well, I don't think we want to do any long series. Like, Cyberpunk.
I think we'd have to...
So we'll have to see, right? If it looks like it's going to be soon, we might do like it might be interesting to do like a couple of OVAs or something. But
OVAs.
They're like so original video animation. So they're kind of like standalone pilots.
Okay.
Though they vary in length. Some are like standalone pilots. Some are like movies. Usually, I think they're usually a bit shorter than a movie.
Right. Yeah. Well, we like depending on the timing, we could just do like a couple one-offs, like a entire season breakdown, like the way that EFAP does, or something like that, or
we'll see when we'll burn that bridge when we come to
it. Sounds good.
In the meantime, you can check me out on my website, maxgeng.com. It's got links to everything, anything and everything. It's on there. Party games coming out maybe in the next few months. Books probably, I think probably next year, December. We'll see. And Sea Beast may come out sometime this decade. We're same with Spirited Away. Jesus Christ. And yeah, so if you wanna see it, read any of my short stories, those are on the website. If you want to watch our primer review, that's on this channel. If you want to check out Andrew, his channel is linked in the description. You can go see it and watch. He's got a bunch of great content doing video game development. And if you like Arcane, you might like video games. If you like video games, video game development might be interesting to you. And yeah, and recently had a game jam. You can check out those. And was there anything you wanted to show, Andrew?
Other than that, I think you pretty well covered it. Thanks, Max.
Oh, no problem. All right. Well, then that has been us talking about Arcane. Season 7. No, Season 1, Episode 7. I just did an echo time jump here. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Until then,